Day 2 of my £5 for 5 days budget challenge, and breakfast, which is going to be fruity rice. Right, so breakfast, I'm going to use this leftover rice I have from yesterday, which I chilled down quickly so it's perfectly safe. I'm going to warm that up and mix it with some apricots and apple. Rules and parameters, by the way, for this challenge are in day 1, so if you haven't seen those, do go back and have a look at those. I'm not going to repeat it. Right, let's crack on. So, just going to give these a quick wash. I mean, the good thing about these apricots is because they were in that box, they're right on the peak of ripeness. So often when you buy apricots in the shops, they're a little bit too firm, but these are just spot on. Sometimes a tiny little woody bit right there in the stalk end. Can't really think of anything to do with the apricot stones. I think you probably could break them open and eat the apricot kernel, although it might be one of those things where it's got amygdalin in it and turns to cyanide in your stomach, so maybe not. And I think the other one, I might dice it smaller so it mixes in with the rice. And I think I'm going to use about half of my leftover rice, and I'll probably save the other half for something else. This diced apricot is going to go into the rice first and get mixed in, and I'm just going to microwave that to warm it through. So apple, complete with the skin, I'm just going to grate straight into the rice. The good thing with grating is I can go really close to the core. I'm going to freeze that apple core because I don't know, I might use it for something, for flavouring or something. So I'm just going to mix that in with the rice. In the microwave for a minute. I'm just going to give it another mix. Now the grains are starting to separate a little bit. Back in the microwave for 1 more minute. Okay, that's fluffing up nicely, that rice now actually. And it's piping hot, you can see the steam coming off of that, so I'm going to have to wait for that to cool down a little bit before I can eat it. My sliced apricot on top. Oh, that'll be good for the thumbnail, won't it? Nice little bit of rosy apricot skin. Okay, well that's breakfast. Sorry about all the weird shadows. It's artificial lighting here in the kitchen. It's not great. Let's go and see what that tastes like. Alright then. Fruity rice. It's quite sour. I guess that's the apples mostly. That would be nicer with a bit of sugar and cinnamon on it. But not a disaster. Now people have in the past told me that if you don't have sugar to go on porridge or something, try salt. I guess we'll do that. And try salt on just one little bit on the spoon there. Let's see what that's like. Yeah, well, it's not terrible. It's not what I would choose. I don't think I'll do that again. I think actually the amount of fruit here would have gone further, would have gone over more rice. And I think that's possibly why it tasted a little bit sour. It's actually, there's quite a lot of fruit in there compared to the rice, but that's fine. Not bad, a bit sour. I think that was the apricots actually, because I tried a bit with just apple in it, and that was actually quite sweet. The apricots were quite sharp. So just have to remember that for the rest of those apricots, what we're going to do with them. That might have actually been nicer with a bit more rice, maybe only 1 apricot. Alright, so that's breakfast. That seems to have filled a hole. I need to go and edit yesterday's video now, and then we'll crack on with lunch. Day 2 lunch, I think we're going to have baked potatoes, a salad, and I think I might have the rest of that pea mixture over the top of my baked potatoes. So just going to give those a little rinse, and just stab them a few times, make sure that they don't explode. I don't think potatoes do that really, do they? And I'm going to roll them in this salt here. There we go. Okay, and that will go into the oven. So those will go in the oven just like that, at 180°C until they're done. But I'm not going to waste that oven being on. I think I'll make some sausage rolls. Just to squeeze a bit of extra flavour into my sausage rolls, I'm going to dice an onion and I'll just incorporate that as a layer inside the pastry. Going to fry that and caramelise it down a bit as well first. You know where that lot goes. Going to go for 120 grams of flour and then 50 grams of my lard. 49 grams of lard, 50 grams near enough. A pinch of salt and the rest of my mixed dried herbs from yesterday. That all goes into the food processor. We could rub that in by hand, but I'm going to be lazy. That'll do. And now really just the tiniest little dribble of cold water just to bring that together. Okay, I think that's going to come together as a dough now, yeah. So that was about probably a tablespoonful, maybe 2 tablespoons of water. Just going to bring that dough together into a ball, pick up all the little crumbs, make sure I don't waste any. Now I'm not going to work that too much because I do want it to be crumbly. So I'm going to roll that out now into a nice thin sheet of dough, and I'll figure out how many sausages we can actually roll up in this. And my plan here is to make some sausage rolls. Some of them I will eat today as part of a meal, and others I will put in the fridge and we can warm them up or take them out as a picnic or whatever another time. Okay, I think that's probably still a bit thick actually, so I'll carry on rolling that thinner. So just with one of these sausages, just to get a rough idea, let's have a look. So we want about, it's going to be about that much pastry, so if I just put a little mark there. So I reckon I've got enough here to do 1, 2, 3, and the trimming's probably 4 sausage rolls. So just using a knife without a sharp edge so I don't cut my silicone mat, I'm going to trim it to approximately the right width. That's how much pastry I'm going to work with for each sausage. And I'll roll the rest of it back up and we'll have another go at that in a minute. I might get 5 out of here actually. Let's have a go. If I do it carefully. These onions are very nicely caramelised now, so I'm just going to have a little sprinkle of those on each one. Let's get all my pastry lined up and then we can just do this in a production line. This is just really to give those sausages a little flavour boost because they are a little bit bland and ordinary. Here we go. Let's just roll that up and then give that a little bit of water on there for sealing it. And there. This is not really how you'd normally make sausage rolls. You'd normally use sausage meat, but I have sausages. I could have thawed them out, I suppose, and taken them out of their skins, but throwing away the skins is also throwing away part of the nutrition. I'll be kind of amazed if these actually don't unroll in the oven. But we'll see. Because of course the pastry has to swell up a little bit as it bakes. Okay, well, 5 kind of weird sausage rolls. And just to give those a little chance to expand, I'm just going to cut some slits like that on them. Hopefully that will end up looking a bit decorative. So I'm not wasting energy. I'm going to bake those at the same time as my baked potatoes. The pan shouldn't need any greasing because there's quite a bit of fat inside of the pastry here, so it shouldn't need any additional greasing of the pan. So that's going to go straight in the oven. I'm going to prepare a little salad to go with my baked potato. So I've got carrot here, I'm just going to grate that up. And here's the thing, I haven't got any of the usual things to glaze my sausage rolls, which would be milk or egg. So I'm going to try something a bit different, which is, I'm going to get my carrots here. Squeeze out a bit of carrot juice. And then I've got this, which is the other half of those onions I just fried, which I was going to mix in with the peas, but I decided to keep separate just for a bit of variety of texture. And I deglazed the pan with some water. So there's this caramelised juice that's come off of the onions, and that is going to be the glaze for my sausage rolls. I don't know if that's going to be nice or not, but we'll see. I think it could certainly take a little bit of salt in there for seasoning the top of those sausage rolls. And they are about 3/4 baked at this point, so I'm just going to brush them over with this stuff and then put them back in. I don't know if this is actually going to impart any flavour, but I think it might, just to make them look a little bit more browned. Right, let's get those back in the oven. They need about another 10 minutes. Okay, sausage rolls I think are done. And I think that glazing actually worked. I'm just going to probe for temperature right in the middle because these were cooked from frozen. So I'm just going to make sure that the internal temperature has gone, yeah, it's gone way up to 80, 85. Yep, those are cooked. These are not for this meal though, so I'm just going to let those cool down, and that's going to be part of my dinner tonight and possibly a snack for another day. Chef's privilege. Okay, let's see what these spuds are up to. I think they might be done. They were actually singing when they came out of the oven. Yeah, they feel fluffy inside. The other way you can test this if you don't have a temperature probe is just put a metal skewer in there, leave it for a little while, and then test the temperature of that. You can use your lip actually on that, because your lip is very sensitive. You can tell whether that's hot. Just going to let those stand for a bit while I prepare my salad. This lettuce was perhaps the saddest item in the box, apart from maybe those weird potatoes. And it was just a tiny bit limp. But as I said yesterday, I just put it in ice water and it does come back to life. It wasn't obviously too far gone. So yeah, just refreshing it in a little bit of ice cold water has brought it back to life, made it crisp again. So that's going to go in with my grated carrot. I don't really have anything I can use as a salad dressing on here. I suppose I could open that mango and squeeze out the juice, but I've got different plans for that. And then I've got a small apple, which has got a weird bit on it, which I'll just cut out. And what I'm going to do is just take one strip of this apple peel, and that's going to go into my sourdough mixture, because apple skins typically have yeast on them, and that might just be enough to boot up my sourdough mix. I'm not sure it's going to work, because I think actually the alkalinity of the self-raising flour is going to kill it. Keeping the skin on because obviously there's little bits of vitamins and nutrients and stuff in that apple skin. Of course, we're not actually calculating all of the vitamins and stuff. It was hard enough work doing the calories and protein for this, so if you're disappointed that I haven't done all of the vitamin analysis and stuff, I'm sorry about your disappointment, but it was a heck of a workup just to do the protein and calories. Yeah, and that apple core I'm going to put in with the freezer with the other apple core, and I might do something with the apple cores later. So I'm just going to toss that together. And because I don't have any dressing here, I'm going to actually scrunch this down a little bit, just to kind of get some juice out of those apples and carrots. That'll do. Yeah, that brings it together a little bit. Not really sure if anything's going on in that sourdough actually, but I think that apple core will probably help. If it certainly can't hurt. That might help to actually increase the acidity a little bit. So this is that pea mixture I made yesterday. This is the split pea mixture I made yesterday. I've reserved about 1/3 of it. That's going to go back in the fridge. This 2/3 of the reserved amount I'm going to warm up in the microwave. That will be used to dress my baked potatoes. Right, let's see if I've done justice to these baking potatoes. Oh, I would say so. Yeah, I might just keep a little bit of that salad. Okay, and then my split pea mixture is going to go on top of the baked potatoes. Now I suspect that will need a little bit more seasoning. That pea mixture did yesterday, so I've got the salt that's left in the pan here. Might as well just put that on the top there. Well, there's lunch. Let's get that to the table and give it a taste. Okay then, as is customary, I'm going to have a bit of pepper on the top there. And, well, I don't suppose there's, again, going to be any major surprises here because this is the same pea mixture that I had yesterday. So, let's just give that a taste with the potato. That definitely works. Butter would have improved it, but I don't think lard would. I would say that's actually quite a healthy lunch. And those split peas, when they're cooked down like that, especially with that little bit of spice in there, I've got enough substance to carry that baked potato quite nicely. So the salad, which is just carrot, lettuce and apple scrunched up, bruising it like that has definitely made it a little bit more succulent. That is a nice, good, tasty lunch with a lot of variety of flavour in there and texture, and it's got a, you know, the nice contrast between the warm potato and the cold salad. Lots to enjoy here. Really happy with that. Okay, so today on Here's What You Could Have Foraged, can you see the thing to be foraged on this grass verge here? It's this. This grass looking plant here is actually crow garlic. It's a relative of onions, and at this time of year these green shoots like this can be cut and used in the same way as chives or spring onions, and it has a similar sort of flavour, oniony sort of flavour, ever so slightly earthy I would say, and there's a lot of it around here. You do have to be a bit careful at this time of year that you're not picking some other kind of bulbs, because some spring flowering bulbs are very toxic, but this is crow garlic. Very sure of that. You can tell actually because when you roll the stems in your fingers they're kind of corrugated. So there we go, could have foraged crow garlic. Not sure I would have picked it from there. So here is something else we could have foraged. Somewhere up above us is an apple tree, and down here we've got crab apples. They're not great, but actually if we were to rummage around in amongst all these leaves, further down the hill we go, you can see quite a lot of crab apples down here, and some of these will be in decent enough condition to be able to be used. They need a really good scrub, and they might only be good for making juice, but actually if we needed some acidity in our food, that would be ideal. In fact, they go all the way down the hill here. So the tree must be up at the top of the hill here somewhere. One of these trees here, not that one, that's a birch with birch polypore on it. Possibly this tree here. And then all the way down here are all these crab apples, possibly feral apples actually. They could have grown from a seedling that somebody's just discarded. Maybe even like a golden delicious, because they do look like that kind of an apple. And you can see something's had a nibble on that, maybe a deer or a hedgehog. And I mean, that's the purpose of apples, is that they stand throughout the winter, keeping the seeds preserved, and then in the early spring, as the animals chew away at the apple flesh, they'll expose the seeds just in time for them to germinate for next year. So yeah, we could have had crab apples. Up here, this used to be a fairly easy footpath up this hill here to what used to be Durley Halt railway station. In the rains we had this winter, the path is completely washed out. So you can see great big channels have been cut by the amount of water that flowed through here. Quite unprecedented. So yeah, there used to be a railway station right here, and in fact you can still more or less see some traces of it. Let me see if we can find something. So just along here, well, there's a piece of railway architecture. That's probably a signal post or something. And if we look along here, you can see that's where the track used to run, and I think the platform was over this side. Some parts of this track you can still walk as a footpath, so if that's something you're interested in me covering, let me know in the comments. Well, this is the old gate. So there used to be a gate here. I think there was a level crossing, and that's the remains of the level crossing gate. You can still see the paint on the timbers there. Either this way. Okay, here's something else we could have foraged. This is an elder tree, or it was an elder tree before it fell down. And these are wood ear fungus, and they look pretty sad, don't they? But they dry out and then rehydrate throughout the season. And so it's not unusual to find them in a really sad looking state, all shriveled up. These are kind of semi-hydrated, but they're very good for drying, because you just lay them out on a rack and they dry down into these tiny little crispy things, and then you soak them in water and they swell back up again to their original size. They do that while they're on the tree. That's part of their kind of life cycle. So there we go, jelly ear. That's the thing we could have foraged. In fact, I did pick some of these the other day, not for this challenge, but picked some, and I've got them drying at home. Here you can see the railway track a little bit more clearly. That's where the railway track used to run, through there. And again, there's another remains of a gate here from a level crossing, pedestrian level crossing, just the traces of a gate.
Can't walk that bit because it's private. But yeah, if you're interested, well, there's the other gate from the other side of the track. And that would have been the latch that the gate fixed into. So if you are interested in seeing a exploration of this old Botley to Bishop's Waltham railway line, let me know in the comments. And here's what you couldn't forage, because that's called rustling. Right, I've got an assortment of leftovers to use up, so I'm going to make some soup, and I'm going to have my sausage rolls with that soup. So I've got this stew from yesterday. So we've got the potato stuff in there, we've got that split pea dal-ish thing, and I have actually also got these caramelised onions, but I think I might use them as a kind of garnish, and then just enough water really to loosen that up and make it into a soup. Well, that's interesting. The food processor does not do as well as the hand blender would, so I may have to put this into batches and blend it to smooth with the hand blender. In fact, I think I'll do that now. Okay, that's a fair old bit of soup that's made, but that's good. I'm just going to warm that through thoroughly. Put the lid on because it tends to blip. This is a good opportunity to taste for seasoning. That's good. Predominant flavour in there is onion, but I can actually taste the swede and cabbage and other things as well, so it's a nice savoury soup. It's going to take a while to warm through. This is the trouble with thick soups, is that it just, if you have to keep stirring it, or else it just develops a layer of bubbles at the bottom of the pan, then burns. Okay, that soup's lovely and hot now. I'm just going to serve up a nice big bowl full of that. A few of these caramelised onions. They're cold, but the soup will just warm them up by the time I get that to the table. And then, because why not, I think I might just have a little bit of this salad as a garnish on there. It's got apple in it, but I think that might be interesting. Warm sausage rolls, very crumbly pastry. That one's almost falling apart. I think that might be the one I probed with the temperature probe when I cooked them. That's dinner. Let's get that to the table and give it a taste. Okay then, well, I actually want to taste one of these sausage rolls to start with. So very, very crumbly pastry. Could have stood to have a lot more onion in there, I reckon, and it would have still been there. I can hardly taste those extra onions I added in there, but it's still nice. And here's the thing, when you make pastry with lard, you get a very, very short crust. Just completely crumbly. Really nice. So any of these bits of pastry that crumble and fall off are going to be kind of croutons in my soup. Right, soup time. Let's try it with a bit of the onion and a bit of the garnish. That's all right. It needs a little bit of pepper. Most things do. Often when I've really enjoyed soup, it turns out to have had cabbage or swede or turnip or something in it. Those are those vegetables which, when they're blended down, they actually just add tremendous depth and robust sort of flavour to a soup. And as you might have seen, I'm being careful to eat my sausage rolls directly over the bowl, so any bits of pastry that crumble off are just falling in the soup, and that's just another texture in there to enjoy. Soup and sausage rolls is actually a combination that I quite often have anyway, but not usually homemade everything like this. So I will finish up the soup, and I will finish up these onions. I don't think I'll put any more of that salad garnish on there. It was interesting, but not quite right. So soup and sausage roll, very happy with that meal. That was really tasty and very filling. So that was day 2, and I'm pretty happy with most of that. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon for day 3.